Welcome to this explainer. Today we're jumping right into a massive, foundational clash of ideas: the faith-based worldview versus the atheistic worldview. We are going to explore this fierce philosophical debate exactly as it's argued by theologian Paul Henebury in his recent lectures. Now, whether you're already deeply immersed in theology or you're just kind of fascinated by how people construct their reality, we're going to impartially map out exactly how Henebury builds his case against materialism and for intelligent design.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our debate roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the fundamental worldview debate. Then, we'll tackle immaterial concepts, followed by intelligent design. After that, we'll unpack the psychology of unbelief, and finally, wrap up with the consequences of the worldviews.
Section 1. The fundamental worldview debate. So Henry sets up two totally irreconcilable ways to look at our existence. On one side, you've got the atheistic or materialist worldview. This is the idea that everything is just the result of blind chance, evolutionary processes, and crucially here, absolutely zero divine accountability. On the flip side is the faith-based worldview, which is anchored in this foundational concept Henebury calls creaturehood. Creaturehood is basically the assertion that human beings are not just cosmic accidents. We're intentionally created beings. And because we are created, we are inherently answerable to a creator. This right here is the absolute bedrock of his entire argument. It's not just about how we got here. For Henebury, it's entirely about who we answer to.
Section 2. Argument 1. Immaterial concepts.
Now, this is where Henebury really goes on the philosophical offensive against a purely materialistic universe. And it starts with a surprisingly tricky question. Have you ever actually seen the number 3? I mean, really think about it. You've seen 3 cars parked on the street. You've seen the symbol for a 3 written out on a chalkboard. You've probably asked a barista for 3 shots of espresso. But you have never actually seen or touched the abstract concept of 3. Henebury argues that things like numbers, or the laws of logic, are undeniably real. Scientists rely on them literally every single day. Yet, they have absolutely zero physical substance. So, the crucial point is how this heavily challenges materialism through what he calls the immaterial mind. If we constantly rely on concepts and logic and a consciousness that exists entirely without physical substance, well, where do they come from? Henebury argues they couldn't have just randomly evolved from a physical brain, because structurally, the brain is essentially just biological matter and water. Instead, he asserts that human thoughts are immaterial, and therefore, they absolutely must originate from a pre-existing divine mind. It's a really powerful challenge to think about. If the universe is literally only matter, how on earth do immaterial thoughts even exist?
Section 3. Argument 2. Intelligent design.
Moving from abstract philosophy right into the physical world, Henebury pivots to teleological arguments. He focuses on what he terms general revelation. Take the staggering precision of a solar eclipse, the fact that the moon happens to be exactly 400 times smaller than the sun, and yet positioned perfectly to cover it from our exact viewpoint. Or look at the complex navigation systems in bird migrations, or the famous waggle dance of bees, where they communicate exact geometric coordinates of nectar to the rest of the hive. And zoom in to a microscopic level, the human cell. Scientists now realize a single cell is vastly more complex than a major city or supercomputer. Henebury's point is that this irreducible complexity, this absolute purpose in nature, simply cannot arise from an accidental lightning strike on, as he puts it, pond slime. For him, purpose demands a purposer. And this brilliantly illustrates his point about human uniqueness. A cow looks at a gorgeous sunset and just goes, moo. But a human sees that exact same sunset and goes, wow. Henebury uses this really fun metaphor to argue that humans alone possess this unique designed capacity to actually appreciate beauty and the glory of creation. A cow just isn't built to be awestruck. It's built to eat grass. Humans, he argues, are distinctly designed with an immaterial soul specifically to respond to the majesty around us. Section 4. The psychology of unbelief. Well, this brings up a pretty massive psychological counterargument. If the evidence of an intelligent creation is supposedly so obvious everywhere we look, why are there so many highly intelligent atheists? Take the brilliant philosopher Bertrand Russell. There's this famous anecdote where he was asked what he would say to God if he died and suddenly found himself facing the Almighty. Russell reportedly said, "You did not provide me with enough evidence to believe in you." Henebury directly critiques this. He calls it the ultimate intellectual self-deception.
According to Henebury's framework, Russell was using the very brain and mouth designed by a creator to deny that creator. He argues it's a misuse of human faculties to see the universe as just a cold, mechanistic machine. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Henebury explains why this happens. He draws heavily on the biblical text of Romans chapter 1, focusing specifically on the word suppress. To suppress means to actively, forcefully hold down the truth. It's exactly like trying to hold a highly buoyant beach ball underwater in a swimming pool. It takes active, constant, exhausting effort. Henebury argues that non-believers don't actually lack evidence. Rather, they actively push down their innate internal knowledge of God. And why do that? Because the alternative, actually acknowledging a God to whom they are morally accountable, is an intrusion on their lives that they simply do not want. They desire complete moral independence, so they suppress the truth.
Section 5. Consequences of the worldviews.
So what does this all mean? Where do these two opposing paths actually lead us? Let's look at the outcomes. On one side, the faith worldview. Henebury argues that when a person acknowledges their creaturehood, it leads naturally to deep thankfulness, profound wisdom, meaning, and absolute clarity, even when the world gets dark. But on the other side, the atheism outcomes. Henebury is uncompromising here. He argues that rejecting God and exchanging the truth for a lie inevitably leads to futile thoughts, foolishness, ethical and societal perversion, and ultimately divine judgment. In his view, a society that drifts away from its creator is one that will inevitably spiral downward.
We've covered a literal ton of philosophical and theological ground today, unpacking exactly how this worldview clash is structured in Paul Henebury's teachings. To wrap up, I want to leave you with this final, highly provocative question drawn from his arguments. Are we objectively evaluating the universe, or are we simply suppressing the truth to see what we want to see? It's a question that completely challenges the deeply personal nature of reality, our own worldview biases, and our potential for self-deception. No matter where you personally stand in this debate, it is a vital question to ask yourself. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.